absolutely wild hodgepodge of nonsense. We're going to talk about the Ketel Marte story. We're also going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals loss and should they go after Trey Hendrickson. And we're going to do it all next.
The Ben Garcia Show. Yeah. Woo. Best show in the land. Yup. Listen. Come and get your information from Ben Garcia. Get the latest on your quarterback, running backs, and receivers. Tune in, so any other show you don't need them. Any news that he giving out, please just believe him. Giving out the latest prediction and top-notch analysis. Wanna hear the truth, better have thick skin like calluses. The latest move that your team just made can be damaging. The dudes ain't speaking no facts, they just be rambling. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. Yeah. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. The Ben Garcia Show.
What is up, guys? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful Monday where we got a lot of things to talk about, and I'm a little bit late, but I've got good reasons for that I won't share with you guys. It is a sluggish morning here on the Ben Garcia Show, but with that being said, don't forget to hit that like, share, subscribe button. Follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show. Appreciate you guys tuning into the stream, but there's a lot of things we got to get into, and I want to be able to get into all of it. So let's start it right now. Although, follow me on all social media platforms, like, share, subscribe to the stream, and appreciate you guys being here on this Monday morning. However, I'm a little pissed off this morning. There's more than one reason for that. But at least in the sports world, I've got one to be able to really sink our teeth into this morning. So, there was this story that came out from Nick Picoro of the AZ Central. It was actually a really good read. I am not much of a scavenging the internet for all the crooks and crannies, for all the deepest stories. I read all the big stuff, but this really takes the cake. The other day, Nick Picoro put out an article that basically described some of the frustrations between the Arizona Diamondbacks and, of course, the Ketel Marte. And it was kind of interesting because we haven't talked about the Diamondbacks in months, because regardless of what this show is, which is covering all Arizona sports, and my favorite teams, the Sun Devils, the Diamondbacks, the Suns, the Cardinals, I'm not going to talk about you unless you give me a reason to talk about you. And the Diamondbacks are giving me a reason to talk about them for all the wrong reasons. And there's a lot of stuff going on social media that's even more annoying than that. But the other day, Nick Picoro wrote an article basically talking about the Diamondbacks being fed up with the coddling nature that has been Ketel Marte and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Apparently, the house robbery incident that kept him out the first couple of games of the season was mostly due to the fact because he was just vacationing in the Dominican Republic. And apparently, he came back to the United States because his house got robbed. There was no instance that he was taking time off to grieve or whatever, and that really spiraled into Ketel Marte asking for days off that Torey Lovullo does not give him, and that the Diamondbacks and the Diamondbacks and Ketel Marte are at a little bit of wits' ends with each other because of the coddlingness that happens with Ketel. And here's a couple of things I took from that story. And that's this. Ultimately, I do not care if there is some coddling of stars in baseball and basketball. In the NFL, it's a little bit different at the quarterback position because so much rides on that position. But Ketel Marte is a next level player. He is one of the best players in the major leagues. He is a top two second baseman in the MLB, probably at worst, him being the second or third best. And so when I hear a story comes out that there's some coddling going on for a superstar in baseball, I'm not shocked, and I'm not going to act shocked. However, what I will say and do is the following things are a little frustrating. Ketel has continued to let Torey Lovullo take the fall for the egregious off days during the most inopportune times of the Diamondbacks season. And oftentimes we would get upset with Torey Lovullo. What are you doing? Why are you resting this guy? The Diamondbacks desperately need this guy to start performing now, but that wasn't the case. He would sit and we thought it was a Torey thing, when in actuality, it was a Ketel Marte thing. And it's coming out now that Ketel Marte is probably the baseball version, a little lesser than that, than Kevin Durant. He's very sensitive. He hears everything. He doesn't like the things that are being thrown his way. There are some things that are real things, like his mother incident earlier this year. You just don't go there. And then there's the other things that are asking for off days, especially in the most inopportune times. Torey Lovullo admitted last week he had no idea Ketel Marte was missing their first couple of games to start the end of the All-Star break. To start the second half of the season. They had no idea because Ketel Marte just basically played hooky and went to the Dominican Republic. So this piece comes out and on Thursday, and the Diamondbacks lose 3 straight to the Colorado Rockies and effectively end again any chances of them making a hallmark story to the playoffs. Just being a team that has the ability to get to the playoffs. So with that being the case, it's a little frustrating with what Ketel Marte did. And reading the article, he is a bit coddled. And one of the things that is so frustrating about it is, what in the world are the Arizona Diamondbacks doing? Coddling a star, especially in the second half to start the season, when you're not necessarily sure if you're a buyer or a seller, and letting him play hooky in the Dominican Republic. Oftentimes, this is not just a Ketel Marte problem. This is a too much coddling problem coming down from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then there's the third point. The backlash against Arizona sports media, because the timing of the article that was released regarding Ketel Marte and the Arizona Diamondbacks is a main reason why the Diamondbacks are struggling. The Diamondbacks just lost 3 straight to the Colorado Rockies. Do you want to know who the worst team in the major leagues? Do you want to know the worst team in baseball is right now? The Colorado Rockies. They've got 35 wins on the season. And you're blaming a piece written by a journalist who had information and whose job is to report that information on the Diamondbacks shortcomings? Here's a little dose of reality for the Arizona sports fan who thinks everything else is someone else's fault. Let's just be fair with what it is. The narrative that Arizona sports media is being too mean and that's why teams are struggling is so beyond lazy. I am once again asking you to hold your teams more accountable. Just slightly. Because this story coming out has absolutely nothing to do with the Diamondback season. You know what does? The fact that Torey Lovullo has continuously mismanaged this team throughout the year. The fact that the bullpen has imploded day in and day out. The fact that there's injuries oftentimes. Gabriel Moreno, where the hell has he been? The fact that Zach Gallen has not been the same pitcher post-All-Star break of the World Series run 2 years ago. The last thing on the list is the fact that Arizona sports media is being a little mean. So yeah, when this story came out, my first thought was, yeah, there's coddling in all sports for all superstars. Depending how great you are, the distraction and your play, if your play outweighs the distraction, you're going to get more leeway. And it's not just like that in sports. Can we all act like adults for a second? In every single business or place of work, there is favoritism. And ultimately, Ketel Marte got that favoritism. So that's not the problem. The issue is fans and people not holding Ketel Marte accountable. Because in that article, it basically says Ketel Marte is an amazing player when he wants to be. And he wants to be often. But it's a real slap in the face to guys like Randall Grichuk, Merrill Kelly, and Zach Gallen, who two of those guys were traded, had to up and move their life. Because in the second half of the season, when Ketel Marte wasn't there, this team spiraled even further out of control. And the Diamondbacks decided to sell. This is not just how does it affect Ketel Marte. This is real life stuff. And Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez and Randall Grichuk and Merrill Kelly, all guys that enjoyed being here, ended up getting traded away. And this is not news to me. I've heard about the issues with Ketel Marte that I don't really think are that big of issues, because superstar has a little bit of an ego. It happens everywhere, in businesses, in places of works, in sports. What I won't stand for is the latter of all of those things, which is the fact that Arizona sports media would have anything to do with this. Anything at all. So it's just absolute nonsense. The only people that are to blame for the Diamondbacks' shortcomings this year is the bullpen, is Torrey, is Zach Gallen not being the same player, is overall the Diamondbacks falling flat on their face, is because of them, not because of pieces that came out. I hate to break it to you, but this is part of the job. You get paid millions of dollars, a minute, an hour, a day to play a game. And our job is to critique you, have opinions, and oftentimes report things that are a little squirmish. And so, talking to even the Geraldo Perdomo thing, oh, please stop talking about Ketel. No, we will. We're going to. I appreciate what Geraldo Perdomo did yesterday. Came out to the media and said, trying to stand up for his guy and be a leader. And for all that, I totally respect that. But stop talking about Ketel. He's a very sensitive guy. He just wants to play baseball. We love him. That ain't it, dude. It just ain't. We have a job to do. You have a job to do. Yours is to play and win games. And if you do the latter part of those things, winning and playing games, we're not going to talk about anything that has anything to do outside of how great this team is. But because of your guys' shortcomings, reports are coming out on why the season might have gotten turned on its head. And Ketel Marte's ego is just one thing on a laundry list of things that are issues, along with Torey Lovullo's mismanagement, and probably you should move on from him, to Zach Gallen not being the same pitcher, to the bullpen imploding. So no, Ketel Marte doesn't even have a 15% hand in this. But he's got a 5. He's got a 10% hand. The other things were bigger. But it's just absolutely crazy. Leave our guy alone. No, we won't. We're going to hold our teams accountable. And we're going to report and talk about and give opinions on things that are a little, not exactly the thing you want to hear. But that's the best way to be a team that is eventually contending in baseball. So I like Geraldo Perdomo. I like what he did, sticking up for his guy. However, that ain't it, dude. Don't try to tell us not to do our job and not to give opinions and not to report. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the story said Ketel was awesome and an amazing player, and the Diamondbacks are really unlikely to trade him. But he played hooky a few times, and it got under people's skin. If that's too much for Ketel Marte to read, look in the mirror and say, maybe I should have a little less of an ego, that's a him issue. That ain't an us issue. So blaming the sports media in Phoenix for being a little mean for your team's shortcomings, oh my God, look in the mirror. Your bullpen sucks. Torey Lovello has mismanaged this team left and right throughout the season. Zach Gallen is not the same player. And Ketel Marte, who is arguably your best player, has a bit of an ego. There's a lot of things that plays a hand in this team's disastrous season. And not one of them is the Arizona sports media is being a little mean. I actually thought the story was pretty interesting, pretty good. And honestly, I wouldn't have thought anything of it if there wasn't dumb people out there trying to blame people like myself for doing our job. Absolutely ridiculous. Moving on. The Arizona Cardinals played a preseason game, and I have to get up and go get my remote. But the Arizona Cardinals, look at that. Just so we're not, look at this. Ketel Marte's right here. Look at that. I don't hate the guy. I think he's a hell of a baseball player. All right. Moving on. So, the Arizona Cardinals played a preseason game and it did not look good in it. There's not much for me to say when it comes to the sorry about this, guys, having a little bit of troubles here. So there's not much for me to say when we talk about the Arizona Cardinals season. Or I'm sorry, there's not much to say when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals' second preseason game. There's an argument to be made that you worry about their depth now, and if this team can be a team that eventually, competes this year, and you can talk about their depth potentially being an issue. You could talk about a lot of different things with this team. I don't think necessarily on the surface of it is, wow, their depth is so bad that they can't be a playoff team. I do think potentially after that Broncos game, you're talking about the Cardinals' depth being a little suspect, maybe more suspect than we thought. However, they played a joint practice on Thursday. No one really won that thing. And on Saturday, the Cardinals really didn't play anyone. And outside of one series with Jacoby Brissett, they pulled him. So as much as I do want to overreact to the Cardinals' preseason loss to the Denver Broncos, I don't want to get too into the weeds about if this team has the depth. Maybe it was a little overstated, the Cardinals' depth, like I maybe thought it was, but I don't think that necessarily matters. The NFC is such a disastrous conference, but the Arizona Cardinals are a team that 100% will be able to make the playoffs this year, especially in this division. In this conference. I apologize to you guys. I keep looking over at my phone. I promise there's a reason for it, but my phone's blowing up this morning. So with that being the case, we're all good. However, looking at the conference and looking at the game, the Cardinals have more than enough depth. So I don't really want to necessarily get into that. What is really interesting to me is the fact that Jonathan Gannon waved the white flag after 2 series in that game. And so ultimately, with that being the case, the Arizona Cardinals lost that game, and Jonathan Gannon decided to lose it early by throwing Clayton Tune into the mix. And Clayton Tune is a disastrous quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he is absolutely pitiful. There is no way you can continue to trot Clayton Tune out at this point into the Arizona Cardinals campaign into the 2025 season. He's got to be done. It's a failed experiment. I don't know what Monty Austin-Fort saw to this guy to Houston. But what was kind of frustrating is Jonathan Gannon not giving the rest of the guys on the offense and even the defense a little bit a chance to show their stuff, which tells me the 53-man roster is already set. Throwing Clayton Tune out there showed me the 52-man roster. Jonathan Gannon throwing Clayton Tune out there after the second series in that game was a clear sign that the 53-man roster is basically set. Because not giving guys a chance out there to show what they have, it's not a great sign that Jonathan Gannon did that. I don't think it's a great thing to show in the locker room that you're not even going to give guys a chance. But that's what that tells me. Clayton Tune, playing in that game for as long as he did, tells me the 53-man roster is set. They don't need to see anything else from anyone, and they don't want anyone getting hurt. They want to be fully healthy going into the season. And so, with that being the case, if JG feels that way, I get it. But I do have to worry about the optics of it and what it looks like for the team that feels like they're just trying to get a spot this year on the roster. And not even giving them a chance feels like, just a little bit, that you're kind of stabbing those guys in the back a little bit and saying that their work isn't really appreciated. Because on a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2021 and hasn't won a division in a decade, you should be taking all the time you have. But I could be wrong there, and I'm willing to be wrong there. I just didn't love the optics of it, is all. And so with JG playing Clayton Tune as long as he did, it tells me right now that their roster is absolutely set. And I don't know if I'll call it a true mistake, Aaron, who's saying that in the chat. I just didn't love it. I don't want to make it more out than what it is. It's a preseason game. If in week 1 they come out sluggish, we can point to it, but we just don't know yet. And, pointing the finger at Drew Petzing, like, it just feels like that's low-hanging fruit. The quarterback, Clayton Tune, is atrocious, and there's nothing anyone can do. Kyle Shanahan himself, Bill Walsh could do to make him look good. So, yeah, it was just a little strange. However, that kind of concludes that part. I just didn't think there was much to take out of that Cardinals game, which is a little frustrating. JG, don't waste my time. Like, I don't want to watch the game on Saturday, but I have to because I got to do a show on it. Trey Hendrickson, the Cincinnati Bengals are now fielding calls on Trey Hendrickson. Should the Arizona Cardinals be a team in on him? Here's what's so good about the Trey Hendrickson situation now for the Arizona Cardinals. They should absolutely go after Trey Hendrickson, but they don't have to go after him anymore. This is not a dire situation like it was a few weeks ago, a month ago, 2 months ago. And the Cincinnati Bengals have played this so poorly to where they're going to get less than you once thought for Trey Hendrickson, not more. Because teams at this point in the season can't give him the contract that he wants. And teams at this point don't have the same amount of assets that they did earlier in the year. And they're not willing to give up more. So if the Cardinals can get Trey Hendrickson for less than we thought before, and maybe adding in a Jalen Thompson into the mix, they should absolutely go get Trey Hendrickson. Because as I've mentioned before, this is the year where I believe the Arizona Cardinals can make a massive splash in the postseason. Matthew Stafford's injury reeks of the Christian McCaffrey injury of last year, meaning it feels like they're just sweeping it under the rug and saying, nothing to see here. If that's the case and it's a real injury, I believe the Arizona Cardinals can win the division this year. And then they'll have a home playoff game. And with the NFC being as bad as it is, one tweaked ankle could send this team into the Super Bowl, I believe. So the reasoning why I would go after Trey Hendrickson is because I believe you don't actually know when your window is to compete. You like to think you know, but you don't know. The Commanders and the Lions, both teams just went to the conference championship. The Cardinals could be that team this year. So one of the reasons why I would want them to load up and go get Trey Hendrickson is because I believe it's better to be safe than sorry. And later on in the year, when you're playing in a massive playoff game and you're not generating pressure, you're going to wish you went after and got Trey Hendrickson. However, I just don't think it's as dire of a position anymore. The Bengals have played this all wrong. As much as I like what the Arizona Cardinals did in the offseason, I was still fairly skeptical, and I thought they needed that blue chip pass rusher. However, I just feel really good about what the Arizona Cardinals have at the defensive line and outside linebacker position. I feel good about the Cardinals' front seven as a whole, way more than I did 2 months ago when I was dying for Trey Hendrickson to be here. So the Arizona Cardinals should go after Trey Hendrickson. And it looks like it will likely cost them less than ever before. It's still going to cost you assets, but less than we thought before. I don't think it's as dire of a position. The Cardinals should, but they don't absolutely need to go get him. I just feel a lot more better about it than I did in years past and over the past couple of months. And that is a fantastic place for the Cardinals to be. Going after players because you desperately need them is never a great place to be. But selectively bringing in blue chip players at opportune times, knowing that they are not asked to save the position, is a really great place to be. Because you're not hanging on every word the Bengals say. You're not praying that they eventually cave into your demands. You feel good about what the Cardinals have. And so, if the Cardinals get Trey Hendrickson, awesome. I'd be more than ecstatic to have him here in Arizona. However, they don't have to do it anymore. Over the past couple of months, weeks, and preseason games, I feel really good about this defensive line. I think they're going to generate a ton of pressure. And now I feel like those assets would be better allocated to a different position. Unless someone like Micah Parsons became available. Because that's a young blue chip player. Trey Hendrickson is in his early 30s. You maybe don't want to just go after him because he could fall off a cliff even this season. So the Cardinals should go after Trey Hendrickson, but they don't have to. And that's a great place to be. If the Bengals want to give in to your demands and want to take less on Trey Hendrickson than they originally would have in the beginning had they just traded him, then, then you do it. But you look at this position now, and you just feel a lot better about what the Arizona Cardinals have been doing. This is a team that I believe that has massively improved at the defensive line front. Even at the edge rusher position, guys, I really like Jordan Burch. And I like, what Baron Browning did last year. So yes, I want Trey Hendrickson here. I hope the Cardinals go after Trey Hendrickson. But if they don't go after him, it is not a spot where they are in dire need of it. And just so we're clear, I would go after him. And I believe the Arizona Cardinals don't have many opportunities to go get blue chip guys in what I believe is their Super Bowl window or playoff threat window. So they should absolutely go do it. But if they don't win the Trey Hendrickson sweepstakes, it is absolutely okay. Because they are more than equipped at that position to be really good at it this year. And add Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawlis into the mix, scheming up things, it is a great place for the Cardinals to be. And with or without Trey Hendrickson, they'll be fine. All right, guys, appreciate you guys being here on the show. Do me a favor. I will be here again on Wednesday. I am here Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. We started a little bit later today. I got some things going on. That's what happens. Life happens. Start a little late. Wednesday and Friday, I'll be here at 7 a.m. Do me a favor. Hit the like, share, subscribe button. Follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show. And with that being said, also, I'm still putting together a fantasy football league. I've got a couple of more positions left. DM me on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter if you are interested in being a part of that league. DM me, tell me you're interested in it. I want to be able to play in a league with my subscribers, with my listeners. If I can't get the count that I want to do, then, we just won't do it. But no big deal. So follow me on all social media platforms. DM me at Ben Garcia Show. Tell me why you love me. Tell me why you hate me. Or tell me why you want to join the Fantasy Football League. As well as hit the like, share, subscribe button. And I will see you guys on Wednesday at 7 a.m., 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.